Welcome back, persistent hikers, to glimpses of our California parks. Today, we will again visit the Shasta Cascade region of our California parks, encompassing 22 of over 400 diverse public, state, and federal parks and their related units located inside California. This second Lava Beds video will examine the sad tale of the Modoc Native Indians, their forced occupation and infringement of their ancestral lands by American settlers, their betrayal by the U.S. government, the forced relocation from their ancestral land, the Modoc resistance to save their way of life, the Modoc War, and the final capture and execution of their leaders, all part of the Western expansion credo: you in my way, you can't stay. Lava Beds National Monument is a 47,000-acre volcanic and historical public accessible park maintained by the National Park System. Located within the Siskiyou and Modoc County in the northern section of our state, south of the city of Tule Lake, this park unit was established in 1925 to protect the volcanic landscape, the petroglyph point, early Native American occupation, and the Modoc War sites. The Persistent Hiker documented this park unit in the month of October 2024 and hopes this short video and informative commentary will entice you and yours to come visit this federal park unit in the near future. The Modoc historical display items you've been viewing are found inside the Lava Beds Visitor Center. Take the time to check it out. How can we begin the story of the Modoc demise without discussing first the diverse terrain they chose as home? A harsh lava-covered landscape next to a huge swampy lake. The main reason the Euro-American pioneers of the mid-1800s wanted to remove the rightful owners from their ancestral land was to gain access to the fresh water, to settle the land, raise their crops, and mostly because they were told that the land was theirs for the taking. It was called the Manifest Destiny, and it required the forced removal or extermination of all existing obstacles that stood in the way of the unstoppable Western expansion. Let's step back in time to the Modoc's ancestral past, found here at Petroglyph Point. The rock surface containing the ancient petroglyph artwork found here at Lava Beds National Monument began thousands of years ago when this massive rock formation, created when an ancient volcanic tuff erupted from the floor of ancient Tule Lake, rose up to form an island the Modocs considered sacred. There is more Native American rock art here than anywhere else in California. The Modocs revered the island formation, and lucky for us, the National Park Service protected it for future generations to visit, admire, and contemplate the meaning. A petroglyph is an image belonging to an ancient or prehistoric people created by removing part of a rock surface by incising, picking, carving, or braiding a form of rock art. A pictograph, on the other hand, is an ancient rock painting. Although there are some pictographs found within the Lava Beds area, most of the petroglyphs are found here. All of the monument's rock imagery is located in the traditional territory of the Modoc people and their ancestors and predecessors. Although petroglyphs are still found on cliff faces and boulders along the ancient shoreline of Tule Lake, the most abundant are found here in the northeast corner of the monument at Petroglyph Point. With over 5,000 individual carvings, Petroglyph Point is one of the most extensive representations of Native American rock art in California. The park's pictographs are located inland from the lake where rocks are harder, generally where sunlight illuminates a natural lava bed or portions of a cave's interior. Pictographs can be found on boulders and walls around some cave entrances. Since Petroglyph Point was an island in Tule Lake before it was drained in the 20th century, it could have only been reached by boat. Researchers studying geological evidence believe that the cliff face where the petroglyphs are located was above water only during certain drier periods, and only then could the native inhabitants in boats have made the carvings at each level. The oldest petroglyphs found here are over 6,000 years old. The majority of the pictographs at lava beds are believed to be between 1,500 and about 400 years old. I can't begin to tell you how many images cover the western wall of Petroglyph Point. With so many individual carvings, this site could have witnessed dozens or even hundreds of generations of artists paddled out in canoes, sharp sticks or chipping stones in hand, just to leave their symbolic artwork for others to see. The ancient volcanic formation that makes up this protected Native American site is in itself something to see. The weathered rock surface is a geological masterpiece of ancient layers of an eroding lava formation. Although geometric patterns were predominant in the rock art of lava beds, human, animal, and other natural features sometimes were represented. Although we must now view the site through a tall chain-link fence, you can easily view and photograph the ancient figures through the openings. Don't blame the Park Service for the fence. Consider those lowlifes who would deface thousands of years of history if not for this security deterrent. RJ loves DG. I can't begin to tell you, RJ, how emotional I feel seeing your juvenile inscription amongst thousands of year-old petrographs. Got to leave more crayons and coloring books at the visitor center, so those children who feel inclined to leave their illegible messages on protected park features have a safe outlet to express their juvenile tendencies. We'll even give them wall space inside the visitor center to proudly display their talents or lack thereof. Sorry for that moment of negativity, but the deliberate destruction of park property gets my blood boiling. Speaking of negativity, let's move forward to the Modoc War. There are 5 Modoc war sites in Lava Beds National Monument: Gilman's Camp, Canby Cross, Hospital Rock, Thomas Wright Battlefield, and the infamous Captain Jack Stronghold. First, there's Gilman's Camp, a temporary army camp set up in the spring of 1873, housing over 600 Army soldiers. The Gilman's Camp Trail is a level quarter-mile, easy walk over packed dirt, well-marked trail, taking you through the area where the camp once stood. A nice short hike, but no structures remain. One must imagine what it was like being a soldier, readying yourself to exterminate the rightful inhabitants of the land because you were told to do so. For those of you who've never served in the military or understood Alfred Lord Tennyson's famous poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Why do you think the military recruits innocent young men? Our second stop is Hospital Rock, an isolated lava formation along the shore of Tule Lake, served twice as an encampment and hospital for U.S. troops during 3 attacks on Captain Jack's stronghold. The 0.3 mile out and back paved trail, elevation 20 foot, gives one a panoramic view of the Tule Lake area, along with an overlook of the Modoc defensive stronghold. Our third stop is the Thomas Wright Battlefield, site of a Modoc ambush on an Army reconnaissance unit on April 26, 1873. The 2.3 mile out and back trail is an easy dirt route with a gentle 108-foot elevation gain that passes by the Black Crater. However, signage and route confusion are possible. This was to be one of the last conflicts of the Modoc War. Our final stop brings us to Captain Jack's stronghold. Here, a small band of 60 Modoc warriors repelled attacks by 1,000 U.S. Army forces in the winter of 1872-73. This 1.5 mile rugged trail has a 68-foot elevation gain, crosses uneven ground through the lava formations, and requires one to watch their step to prevent ankle twisting. While you watch my stronghold images, let's take a step back in the history of the Modoc tribe. For thousands of years, the Klamath Basin has been a home for people who came to live and to enjoy the richness of the land. First were the ancients, who left only tracings on the rock and a record of their time here. How many groups came and went is not known. What is known is that the Modocs who lived here in the 1840s began to be overrun by the ever-increasing stream of pioneers from the east. Many pioneers passed through, but some settlers stayed. By the 1860s, they had ranches and settlements in and around the basin, claiming the land for themselves. The Modoc people began to feel crowded and threatened. The early settlers, annoyed by the persistent Modoc presence, called in the government to solve the issue. Government officials persuaded the Modocs to leave their traditional lands and move north to live with their neighbors, the Klamath. Problem was, these two tribes could not live together in harmony. The Modocs felt like aliens and did not receive all the supplies they were promised by the government. Unable to find relief, they left the Klamath Reservation and returned to their traditional land on the Lost River, near the Oregon-California border. The Modoc leader, Ken Tapush, or Captain Jack as he was later called, tried to keep his people clear of trouble with the settlers, but it was not always possible. Captain Jack wanted a reservation on the Lost River, but the settlers pressured the army to move the Modocs back to the Klamath Reservation. On November 1872, a detachment of the 1st Cavalry entered the Modocs' camp and ordered Captain Jack's men to disarm and return to the reservation. As the Modocs were compliant, words then shots were exchanged. Later, 1 soldier was dead, 7 were wounded, and the Modocs headed for the lava beds. On the same morning that Captain Jack's band was confronted by the cavalry, a group of volunteers attacked the camp of another band of Modocs under a sub-chief known as Hooker Jim. In the fight, several Modocs were killed, and during their retreat around the north side of Tule Lake, Hooker Jim and his followers took revenge by killing 12 male settlers on isolated ranches in their path. Although dismayed at the killing, Captain Jack took Hooker Jim and his men into his sanctuary. On January 17, 1873, a 2-pronged attack was launched by the Army on the stronghold from the east and the west. The first attack failed, with the Army suffering 37 casualties. The Modocs lost no one. It became obvious to the Army that more troops would be required to dislodge the Modocs, and reinforcements were dispatched. The Army was unwilling to give them the reservation, and Captain Jack refused to give up Hooker Jim. As talks dragged on, the Army forces continued to grow in size and strength. At the next Peace Council, Captain Jack, fearing a government attempt to capture him and kill his people, shot General Canby and Preacher Thomas. 3 days later, on April the 15th, 1873, the Army again attacked, supported by fire from 4 mortars and 2 mountain howitzers. After 2 days of hard fighting, the Modoc situation became serious. They were cut off from water and harassed by mortar shells exploding every 15 minutes during the night. Under the cover of darkness, the Modocs withdrew to the south along a secret route through the rough terrain and were again loose in the lava pits. Pursuit by the Army brought on more fighting and bloodshed, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Half-starved, encumbered by the women, children, and old people, and divided by conflict over leadership, the Modocs were finally captured in small bands. The Modocs never got the reservation, but for nearly 5 months the stronghold fortress enabled the Modoc fighting force of less than 60 men to hold off an army 20 times their strength. When you walk the stronghold trail and observe the rough lava terrain, you can understand how their fighting advantage was possible. The culture identity of an entire people was lost here, so settlers could graze a few cows. The Modoc leader, Kent Posh, or as he would forever be known, Captain Jack. Colonel Gilman, the officer in charge of the second attack on the stronghold. Some 1,000 men would be required to dislodge them from their almost impenetrable position, wrote Colonel Wheaton. The Captain Jack Stronghold Trail Map. Take your time, but walk with reverence. Everything the Indians did was to protect their simple way of life. Everything our government did was to convert them to the white man's rule and exterminate the troublemakers who fought against the conquering establishment. The Western Indians stood in the way of the manifest destiny. They would lose their lands, their way of life, and most important, their lives. If anyone in this country deserved reparations, it would be the Native Americans.
Hope you enjoyed this park adventure. Take the time to visit our sponsors and become a monthly donor, assisting us in documenting each of our diverse federal and state California parks. By becoming a member of the Persistent Hikers and wearing our Glimpses patch, you are informing the young generation that we seniors still have the capability, although limited, to enjoy our parks just as much as they can. Until our next California park adventure, happy trails.